Hi, welcome to another edition of the Alan Rosenberg Show. I'm kind of a completist, so if I really like a band, I get everything by that band. And sometimes bands release albums that are so critically hated, so artistically reviled, that they're almost considered amongst the worst albums ever made. So I came up with an idea called Treasure or Trash, where I'm going to talk about on occasion albums released by bands that I really like that are like considered like that. Right here is an album that was so critically reviled and so it gets like 1 star. It actually broke the band up initially. And this is Blondie's album called The Hunter. Now I have 3 copies of this album, so I guess I kind of like it, right? So let's talk about Blondie's album, The Hunter, came out 1981. Let's build up a little bit. Now I'm not going to be, I'll do a video later on another time about Blondie and I'll rank their albums. But here was their first album, the Blondie album. I think it's a classic, one of the greatest debut albums ever. And then their second album, Plastic Letters, is good. I thought it was not nearly as good as the first album, but it's good. And then Mike Chapman, their producer, came in, and in my opinion, he took them to a whole nother level with Parallel Lines, one of the all-time greatest albums. To me, this is a 5-star album. Their next album, their fourth, from, what year is this? 76, 77, 78, this is like 79. Eat to the Beat. Again, Mike Chapman, amazing production job and a really, really strong album. It's got one of my favorite songs of all time by anybody, Shaler, on there. Amazing production. Then they released Auto American in 1980. Had 2 #1 hits, but the band refused to tour for that album. Really experimental record. Europa is the opening track, is like an amazing, beautiful theme, instrumental theme song from a movie that doesn't exist. You got the 2 #1 hits on there, of course, Rapture and The Tide is High, which was a cover. And some interesting tracks on here, some that work, some that don't. Auto American. Then, 1981, they released their next album, The Hunter. This album just got trashed by everybody, whether it's the album cover. That is the original hype sticker right there, featuring 2 singles. There's the front, there's the back, and then of course I picked it up on CD, and this is the digitally remastered CD of The Hunter with a bonus track of the 12-inch extended version of War Child. So is this album really as bad as people say it is? Well, it's certainly got problems. Number one, the sequencing, I think, in this album is horrendous. So what they got there, it opens up with a thing called Orchid Club, which is really kind of strange. God, it's got all this percussion. It's not particularly melodic. It's just a kind of a really strange kind of a track. Now, that's one of the things that I love about Blondie. They're one of the most experimental bands. People who are not into Blondie, they'll say, oh, the disco song and Heart of Glass and Hanging on the Telephone one way or another. They're a really, really experimental band. I mean, Auto American is a tremendously experimental album. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. I mean, she does a cover. Follow Me is like from a Broadway show, and, there's just like, they never were afraid to experiment and do different things. And they do it in spades in this album. So Orchid Club is a really kind of strange percussive track that doesn't really go too far. Then it goes into the opening single, Island of Lost Souls, which is kind of like this Caribbean, calypso kind of a thing. It's got a really good horn section on there. It's a little bit, in my opinion, too long, and there's like a little break in there with the music that just keeps going on and on a little bit. I don't think it's a great choice for a single. But I guess, in a sense, they were carrying on from Auto American with The Tide is High, but The Tide is High is just a much stronger track. Then they go into this thing called Dragonfly, which is actually really interesting. It's got a great groove. It's got good music. I don't know what the hell it's about, some kind of interstellar space race, I guess. But Debbie Harry talks like it's a story. But it's got great music. The music is really good. But it's a really strange sequence. That is, I wouldn't put any of those songs in the first three of the album. And in fact, those are the first three. So when you put this album on, getting through those three, you're already in a mood like, what the hell is this? This is just not that good. Then they do For Your Eyes Only. Now, For Your Eyes Only is an interesting story. Of course, there's a James Bond movie. The guys from the producers of James Bond went to Blondie and said, hey, we'd like you to do the theme song for our next movie, For Your Eyes Only. Deborah Harry and Chris Stein wrote a song for it, but they misunderstood. What the producers wanted was Blondie to do the Bond For Your Eyes Only, which of course was done by Sheena Easton, which is a great song, actually. But this song, For Your Eyes Only, on this album, I love. I am in love with Mike Chapman's production of the Blondie albums, E to the B, Parallel Lines, and Auto American. Took the band to another level. Really thick, atmospheric production, heavy, but almost Phil Spector-ish, but clean. Listen to like Shayla, listen to Fade Away and Radiate. Two of my all-time favorite songs by anybody. But the production is beautiful on For Your Eyes Only. I love it. It's a good example of the Chapman production that I love on Blondie. Great, great track. And then they do a thing called The Beast, which is also strange. It's another song that Deborah Harry talks through instead of singing. But it's a good track. It's just, side one, it's just such a strange, you got Dragonfly, which she talks, and you got The Beast, which she talks. It's got good music, though, to be. Really catchy track with the horns. Just really strange. Side 2, I think, is a lot stronger. War Child is what you would the closest to like a classic kind of rockin' Blondie track. It was supposed to be the second single. I don't even know if they ever released it as a second single in America. It didn't do much, but it's a great track. That would be the song that I would have put to open up the whole album, War Child. It's good. Little Caesars, another kind of good music, interesting track, but experimental in a way. But it works. A really good... her name is... she talks in that one also. It's kind of strange. Dance Way, that's the most pop, typical kind of Blondie song that people who are not big fans of Blondie would think of. Jimmy Destry wrote that. It's certainly the easiest, most likable song on the album, and I would have thrown that on side 1 as well. Can I Find the Right Words to Say is another Destry song that he did with Deborah Harry. That's pretty good. It ends really quickly. It's almost like unfinished, but it's good. And then the second magnificent track on the album I love is English Boys. This album's got 2 go-to Blondie songs for me. For Your Eyes Only, which I never get sick of hearing, and English Boys. Song she wrote about the Beatles and when she was young and watching the Beatles. And it's a beautiful Blondie track, really melodic, really catchy, short. To me, it could have been a single. And I love Clem Burke's drums on it. Throughout the whole song, he does these little drum fills that are very low in the mix, but they're there, and it kind of drives the song. Great track. And it ends with The Hunter Gets Captured by the Game, which is a song written by Smokey Robinson. Really not that, I think it was done by the Marvelettes, if memory serves me, but it's not the kind of song that you hear all the time, and it's a really good cover. I like it a lot. Clem Burke plays like timpani on there, so it's got an interesting sound. So, like I said, for me, it's got 2 all-time classics on there. English Boys, For Your Eyes Only are amazing. Dance Way is a great Blondie pop track that is, if you like Blondie, you'd love that song. War Child's a killer track. I would open the album with that. And Island of Lost Souls is not a bad song at all. It's just nothing. It's not as good as The Tide is High, and it's kind of like a knockoff of that with calypso and ooh, and a lot of background noise, and it's a little bit too long. So clearly, I must like this album if I have 3 copies of it. But is it as bad as people say it is? Is it trash? No, it's definitely not. If you are a fan of Blondie, give it a listen. I think you will like it. The sequence of the album is terrible. try to get through those first 3 songs. They're not terrible. The Orchid Club is the weirdest song on the album. Why they did that as the opening track, I'll never understand. I would have buried that. You know what it's kind of like? You know the Fleetwood Mac album, Tusk? Great album, right? And the single was Tusk. I'll never forget when Tusk came out as a single. I'm like, what the hell is that? They just went really out in left field, right? And I loved the song Tusk. Certainly you wouldn't think it's a hit single material, but they did something different. And they buried that song. It's like the second to last album on a double album. So it's an interesting track. It was the single, but it's still like the second to last song on the album. Maybe it's a bad analogy, but Orchid Club should be like the second to last song on the album, not the opening track, if you get my gist. Anyway, give it a try. It's a Spotify world. Definitely try War Child. Definitely try Dance Way. They're really catchy. English Boys and For Your Eyes Only are my 2 favorite tracks. The Beast is kind of interesting. Hunter Get Captured by the Game is a really good cover that works really, really well. And then if you enjoy those songs, then dip into the album, the sequence that it is, and you'll get through Orchid Club. Island of Lost Souls is fine. It's a good track. Dragonfly is interesting. That's my take of Blondie the Hunter. So for me, Treasure. In fact, out of all of these classic Blondie albums, believe it or not, The Hunter is my 4th most played Blondie album. Obviously, Parallel Lines and Eat to the Beat, and then the self-titled debut Blondie, and then for me, I go to The Hunter. I listen to The Hunter way, way more than Auto American, which is also really experimental. I mean, way more. So there you go. But it broke up the band back in '81. They didn't reform again until they did No Exit, like in 1999. So they took a long break. And I guess Debbie was doing some influence from her solo record, which is what she did between Auto American and The Hunter, Cuckoo. But I was never a big fan of this album, which she did with Nile Rodgers and Bernie Edwards from Chic. Anyway, there's the story of The Hunter. Let me know what you think, but give it a try. Don't always judge an album by the cover. Don't just, critics just jump on everything and say it's a piece of crap and it's trash and there's nothing worthwhile on it. But that's not true either. Let me know what you think. Thanks for tuning in to the Alan Rosenberg Show. Please hit subscribe if you're not a subscriber and check out my other videos. And I'm going to do more. Every once in a while I'll do a treasure or trash of some of the worst albums of all time, critically and artistically, by bands that I really love. And do I agree? And do you agree? Have a great night.